High winds are coming as soon as today. Make sure your material doesn't get blown away.
This is the Elegant Homes Podcast with your home improvement expert, Don Riley. Don gives you weekly tips on the biggest investment you'll ever make, your home. Plus, Don talks to industry's leading professionals to make your home elegant. The Elegant Homes Podcast with Don Riley is powered by Marshall Chevrolet in Carrollton, Kentucky.
Welcome back to another episode of Elegant Homes. I'm your host, Don Riley, where we make every home elegant, one home at a time. It is that season. We're going into the end of summer here. And if you've noticed, we've had some high winds in the area here lately. And I've noticed every time I come outside, I'm picking up a plant, I'm picking up a chair, I'm picking up the garbage can. Everything is blowing all over the place. So today we're going to talk about climate and weather change and how it plays such a delicate role in the home improvement business. When you have high winds, there's certain jobs that you just can't do. It's funny that, just the other day we had a job that we were getting ready to put a roof on for a customer, and just out of nowhere we had these 40, 50 mile an hour winds. And when you're trying to put a roof on in 60 mile an hour winds, it don't work out very well, especially when you're trying to put felt paper down and it's flapping all over the place. And so one of the things I like to tell people is I know we've talked about weather trackers. So there's really no way to really know when a high wind's coming in. I mean, the weather, it will tell you north, south winds coming in at certain degrees, but within 30 to 40 minutes of being on a job site, sometimes that weather tracker can shift or move, and you just never know. You might be caught in the middle of a storm, windstorm, and don't even realize it. So you got to prepare yourself. And this is a lot of times why we tie off on roofs. We strap ourselves to the roof. And also we've got to where we'll actually pin some of our materials down to the roof. We'll bring straps and nail the felt paper and everything to the actual plywood once we strip the roof off, just to keep everything from rolling off the roof or blowing away. And these are little tips that are very useful, especially if you're in the roofing business. And the roughest part of when you get a high wind is ridge vents, especially if you're using aluminum ridge vents or you're using metal valleys. Metal valleys, once that wind, you get a 60 mile an hour wind and you got a metal valley laying on top of the roof, it's gone. It's history. The other thing is if you get an aluminum ridge vent, usually they're about 6 inches wide and they're 10 to 15 feet long. And man, those things will just gone too. So you got to be really careful and make sure these, if you are roofing and there's a high wind in the area, that, you keep everything on the ground strapped down or keep it on the roof strapped down. Of course, shingles, never a problem because they weigh so much. But all the accessories is what we worry about when we're on a roof, because, you got felt paper, you got a snow and ice guard, you have ridge vents, you got metal valleys. All those things can be taken off with just a quick 60 mile an hour wind coming along as you're working on a project. So these are things that we look for, we watch out for, and it makes a difference when you're doing that job. Because the last thing you want to do is send a ridge vent through the neighbor's window, right? So we want to make sure that we got everything strapped down and everything is protected when we're doing that job. So today we're talking about high winds. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Are you looking for that new truck, maybe that new Silverado, or maybe even that new Trail Boss? I'm telling you, those new Trail Boss look really good. You got to stop out and see my good friend Rob Marshall at Marshall Chevrolet in Carrollton, Kentucky. Their team is bar none the best. I've bought all my vehicles for the Elegant Home Podcast right there, and I'm telling you, these guys get it done. Have you looked at their social media lately? They are shipping vehicles out the door left and right, and I'm telling you, their vehicles are top notch. I love Marshall Chevrolet in Carrollton, Kentucky, and I'll tell you why. They treat me and the Elegant Home Podcast like family. So stop out and see Rob and the gang, and they'll take care of you. And make sure you tell them that Don Riley And I'm going to say it again, Don Riley from the Elegant Home Podcast sent you and your family to Rob Marshall Chevrolet in Carrollton, Kentucky.
The Marshall Auto Group has grown into one of the largest dealer groups in the state of Kentucky, and we're right in your backyard. With locations in Dry Ridge, Crittenden, and Florence, we're convenient and easy to get to. Plus, we have hundreds of new and used vehicles priced to make it worth your drive. We're a family-run business, making us easy to deal with. Come see us. Marshall Dry Ridge Toyota, Marshall Chrysler Dodge, Jeep and Ram, Marshall Motors of Florence, and Marshall Power Sports. The Marshall Auto Group, easy to get to, easy to deal with.
Welcome back to Elegant Homes. I'm your host, Don Riley. We took a short break there. Today, we're talking all about high winds. And if you've noticed in your neighborhood, a lot of high winds here lately. We've definitely noticed the 2 stories in the air when we're up on these roofs and working and putting either asphalt shingles or metal roofing. Now, there's something that's really interesting. When you're doing a standing seam metal roof, you really got to be careful with high winds because that is sheets of aluminum, rolled form aluminum, and man, I'm telling you, a good wind catches that, and it's gone. So metal roofing is a big thing when it comes to winds. You got to really make sure, you don't have that high winds coming at you, and when you're putting those on. And it's funny, me and the producer were just talking, Tony, and you never really notice, and he was right, you never really notice on the ground a lot high winds, but there's really high winds every day. And the higher you go up, if you're 2 stories or 3 stories in the air, it gets a lot worse. Have you ever noticed you went to the top of a skyscraper and you look at the flag and it's always flapping, so there's a reason for that. As the higher you go up, you get a lot of that, wind rushing through, and it makes a huge difference when you're in the air working on something. So also too, we're getting closer to the that fall, heading in the winter season, and the crazy thing is everything starts what we call decompressing, right? So everything's is alive right now because of the sun, the warmth, and as we start getting a little cooler, going into the fall into the winter, you'll notice that things start shrinking. So you'll notice your door openings, your window openings, all these things will start, expansion, contraction. So it's hot now, and then they're expanding, so basically they'll start contracting here as it gets a little colder. So you'll start noticing gaps in the doors and windows. So these are all things you want to keep an eye out for as we move into this winter season. So back to high winds, it's amazing how we were just talking how quick weather changes today. And and I know we've done a lot of research and we've had people say that, our climate, our world's changing as far as weather and, climate control is different today than it used to be. And there's some truth to that, I think, because it's just amazing. Like wind can just come out of nowhere, and also storms. We've been working outside, and all of a sudden, it's a nice sunny day like right now, and then all of a sudden, within 20 minutes, it's dark and raining. So you got to be really careful. And conditions mean everything in this business when it comes to home improvements, and especially if you're working outside. Not so much inside, but if you're working outside, you always want to make sure you're looking at the tracker, making sure that the wind, there's no high winds and the weather's not coming your way, because that will make for a bad day. So this has been all about weather control today on the Elegant Home Podcast. I hope this gives you some insight. If you're a person or a contractor out there working in this weather, I hope you're watching the tracker. I hope you're tracking these storms and watching these winds. It's so crucial to you and your business as you move into that next project or that next phase of your project. So hopefully today you learned something from us, and we'll continue to educate you and put some of these great tips out there that we do our tip of the week also here at the Elegant Home Podcast. So make sure you check us out on Instagram, check us out on Facebook. Also, we're on TikTok, we're on iHeartRadio, Spotify. So make sure you check us out. This has been the Elegant Home Podcast. I'm Don Riley, your host, where we make every home elegant, one home at a time. Hi, I'm Don Riley, the host of the Elegant Home Podcast. Make sure you download and get your podcast on some of the biggest platforms out there: Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, TikTok. We're on all of them. Make sure you check us out on the Elegant Home Podcast and don't miss some of our tips of the week. I'm Don Riley, your host of the Elegant Home Podcast.